streaming is on.
Howdy, everybody. I'm Robert Cannon. I'm your tournament director for this weekend at the California Middle School Forensics State Championship. It's great, man. We're actually doing this. So many other tournaments have obviously had to cancel and postpone and everything else. I'm really happy to be coming at you in some form and fashion rather than not at all. So obviously today is the judge training session. I've mentioned it a few times to people, but this is a live training session with people in our tournament, an example of our tournament room. And then it's also being streamed live to YouTube. So if you have questions later on, you can reach out to me or you can watch this entire video. Hopefully you're doing that anyway. And we're gonna go ahead and get started right now. I've decided to break up the judge training into 3 different parts. So the first part is gonna be how to make sure that everyone on your team has their contact information loaded into the tournament. And the second thing is to make sure that you understand how to do the e-ballots. And the third is kind of going over the rules. So I figure that if there are coaches or judges out there who need a little bit of extra help understanding the rules, they probably need help in some of the other areas as well. If you understand a lot of the rules that we use in our league, then probably only the first few parts of this tournament are going to be necessary, like the first few minutes. If I'm going to take questions in between each section. So after I go over the initial part about how to register your, not register, but how to make sure that all of your coaches and, judges and your students' information is updated. Once I've gone over that, then I'll ask for questions. And then after I've gone over the e-ballots, I'll ask for questions. And then after I've gone over the rules, I'll ask for questions. So I'll pause for questions in 3 different parts throughout the entire video. And then of course, I'll take some questions at the very end if people have any questions there. Additionally, you can all reach out to me through the tournament, and you can contact the tournament through the registration page on forensicstournament.net, and I can respond to emails directly through that medium. So I'm going to hold off on asking questions while I'm explaining things. The most important thing that we're going to go over at all today is how to make sure that the tournament and your judges and your competitors are communicating effectively. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen here. I have a little slideshow to present for you. So hopefully you can see that. So what we're going to do is I'm going to kind of walk you through everything. So the overarching idea is obviously to communicate through this new platform, through this 8x8 room, and being able to deliver the speeches competitively, but also in an online format because of the whole coronavirus situation. So everything's going to be sent out. The e-postings are going to be sent out, and e-ballots are going to be sent out to the judges. We're going to go over all of that right now. So here's a few areas that we're going to cover just in the slideshow. I'm going to talk about roster updates first. That's what I mentioned. Then I'll pause and ask for questions about roster updates. And then we'll go over postings and ballots, and we'll move on to some other tournament information. Okay, so first of all, I want to talk about roster updates. So let me back out of this slideshow real fast, and I want to show you the full screen. If I can. I'll show you a different tab. So this is forensicstournament.net. Only coaches really need to go here. So if you're a judge or if you're a competitor, you don't really need to interact with this website. You don't need to create an account. You don't need to do any of that. Only coaches need to have done that. And they should have already done that by registering you for the tournament in the first place. So let's see, let me kind of show you what to do here. What's going to happen is you're going to go up here to your school. You can see I've already logged in. I'm Robert Cannon. There's me. And then here's my test school. And when I click on that, you can see I have a student roster and a judge roster. So right now I can click on, let's say, the student roster, and you'll see I have all of these names here. But right now, the big problem is that there's no email and there's no phone. And most importantly, their preferences are set to paper. That's obviously going to be a big problem. So what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to edit all of my students. Once I do that, I'll put in their email, right? So maybe I put abigail@example.com, and then maybe I'll put 555, right? So I'll put in her information. And then this is the most important part. A lot of coaches don't do this. They don't change from paper to text or email. So I would need to contact this competitor and ask, Do you prefer to get your room sent to you by text, or do you prefer to get it by email? So let's say Abigail prefers to get it by email, and we're all good. And then we need to do the same thing for Dolly Madison, Martha Washington, and Martha Jefferson. And just do the same thing all the way down the line, and entering their email and entering their phone number. Once I hit update, it will take all of that, and I can go back to the student roster, and you'll see now I have the option to verify. When I click this verify, it's going to send a verification to that email right there, abigail@example.com. So they're going to get an email sent to them. And that email, they need to click in order to kind of let the registration site know that we're in good communication. So by verifying, you're confirming that the competitor and the tournament are talking to each other. And the judges work the exact same way. So let's go back out. Let's go to our judge roster. So over here on the judge roster, we have the exact same thing. We've got George Washington. George needs some his email. So let's put George at example.com. And then he happens to have the same number, 555-555. We'll do 5556. His number is slightly different than Abigail's. And then, of course, we need his ballot preference. How does he prefer to get his ballot? Usually, most judges prefer to get their ballots by email. So we'll do email. And then he is an active judge. So we're going to update all of that. When we go back to the judge roster, you can see here's that verification process again. So we need to verify his email. We need to verify his phone number. Now, this is not going to be sent because this number doesn't actually exist. So that's why that number is getting an error. So if you enter in a number that doesn't exist, if you forget a digit or something like that, then that text won't go through, and it'll give you an error right there. And that's why I'm getting that error. So you do the same thing for all of your judges. Make sure that you've changed the ballot preferences. Okay. Let me back out. So here on the slide, it's kind of the same thing I just went over, which is you're going to click on your school, and then you're going to come down and select which student that you want to edit. Right, so we select Garrett Morgan and edit all students. And then be sure to change the posting preference. That's what I just went over. And then you would change it to email or to text, whatever they prefer. Make sure that the email and the phone number are correct. A lot of times too, if you don't carefully put in the email, if you write just G. Mogan instead of the Morgan in there in the example, then it will go to a different email address, and you may be wondering, why is Garrett Morgan not getting the correct email? And that's because you might have typed it in incorrectly. So be sure to double check that. And of course, there's the phone number. Be sure to change the ballot preferences or posting preferences, and just click update, and you're all good. So this is exactly what I just went over. It illustrates where the phone, email, and posting preferences have been updated. You can verify everybody at once by clicking that verify contact information. It should click everyone and verify your entire team all in one fell swoop, so you don't have to click a bunch of buttons. What they receive. So this is an email verification. So this will pop up in the email, or I'll show you a text example in just a moment. So this is what Garrett Morgan will get. And he just clicks that verify email button. Once he does that, that tells the tournament that he exists and that we're in good communication. So just by clicking it. And then down here, this is what a text would look like to Garrett Morgan. So you can see you have 60 minutes. I think that's been changed to now it's 6 hours. You have 6 hours to click the verify button before it expires. So this is Garrett Morgan's cell phone, that he can click on that and verify his phone number. Once everything's verified, you'll get these green checks. You want green checks all the way down. I'm sorry, let's hold off on the questions. I'm gonna mute everybody here. I'm gonna mute everyone, and I'll take questions in just a minute. So you want all these green checks everywhere. Okay, so we'll get to postings in just a moment. Let me kind of come back in here. People that are in the room, if you could raise your digital hand, that would help, so that way I can kind of see who has a question. Does anybody have questions about making your tournament? Yeah, okay. Matt, looks like you have a question. Go ahead and unmute yourself, or you can hit the space bar.
I thought you were asking people to demonstrate their ability to do that. So.
Well, you've proven yourself worthy, so we know you know how to unmute. So is there anybody else that has a question? Monica, looks like you might have a question.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yep, sure can.
All right, so I did follow your instructions about editing and sending out an email and verifications, but do I get to do this a day before? Do I need to do as a judge this like a 1 day before for the students, or when do I know that I need to take these steps to send them out for the verifications?
Do it now. Do it now before the tournament. You can do it as soon as we're done in this training session. Actually, don't do it right this minute because I want to make sure that you're getting other information. But as soon as we're done here, go update your rosters. So, and once you've updated, that's fine. You don't need to update anymore for the rest of the tournament. You don't have to keep updating. It's the one time that you've put the information in and the tournament is checking with them. And that it will be updated for all tournaments that you use forensictournament.net ever again. So if you do other tournaments using the system, it will already know that you exist and it already knows that it has a clear line of communication.
And how do we pick the students? I mean, because there will be a lot of students.
So let me understand your question a little bit better. Are you asking like which students to update the email? Is that what you're asking?
Exactly, yeah.
So every student that's entered in our tournament will need to have their email or their text updated. So you'll have to go through your entries and see, okay, which students are competing in this tournament. It may be a good idea just to verify everyone on your team that's on that roster. So just putting everybody's contact information in there. That way you'll ensure that you don't forget someone. Yeah, it looks like Cyrus, you have a question? Cyrus, you have a question? Maybe not.
Unmute. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we sure can.
Okay, sorry. So I'm Cyrus's mom. So for us that are just judging, we don't get this roster, right?
That's correct. That's the coach of your school needs to update that roster. If any of you are here that are judging and you haven't received a verification notice, then you should contact your coach and say, hey, I haven't received a verification notice and I'm worried I'm not going to get a ballot. Can you please update the roster and make sure that the coach is doing that? So we've been sending out email and email and email to all the coaches. Please update your rosters. Please go through and update rosters. We beg everyone to do that. So hopefully they're doing it.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
So that's the reason why I want to discuss this first. It's the most important part of the entire tournament. It's basically our way to communicate with all of the judges and the competitors in the entire tournament. If people aren't updating that, then we can't communicate with you and we can't solve any other problems from there. So we've got to be able to communicate first. Are there any other questions about updating the roster? Okay, great. So I think what we'll do next is we'll get into the actual ballots. So let me go back to my little slideshow here. I'm going to show you the ballots. Oh, I'm sorry, postings. I forgot about postings. So what's going to happen is that we're going to send these postings to the individual competitors, and we're going to be using this 8x8 live video meeting room. So all of you are in this this video meeting room. If anyone is watching on YouTube and they weren't able to get into 8x8 meetings, most likely the reason why is that you're not using Chrome on your laptop, or you may need to download the 8x8 video meetings app. And that's a free app that you can download. And it's pretty self-explanatory. There's no passwords that you need. You just go into your room. There's me and our web designer, Danny, who's done a fantastic job on the site. So we're having a great little conversation. So these are the rooms that we're going to be using to compete in. We're not going to be using Zoom or GoToMeeting or any of the other platforms that you might be familiar with. And that's for a multitude of reasons that I'll happily discuss with you some other time, but I think it's kind of outside what we're doing here. There are some sample rounds if you'd like to see some. There's a few posted on YouTube where you can actually watch some tournaments that these were college competitors who did like the first minute of their speech, just so we could kind of test and make sure that everything was running smoothly. And so you'll see that judges are going to accept, they're going to be given this, which is a ballot. So this is what's going to be sent to Sandra Day O'Connor, and it'll say click here to accept the ballot. So that's what the e-ballot is going to look like. Let's talk about that process a little bit more. So obviously there's a few issues here. I'm just going to remind everybody to please mute your microphones if you could. So the most important process is making sure that the judges accept those ballots. So each round, we will be releasing ballots about 10 minutes before the round begins. So if the first round begins at 8 o'clock, at 7:50, we'll be sending out all the ballots to the judges. So be on the lookout for your ballot either by text or by email around 7:50. If you have not accepted your ballot within 3 minutes, you'll get a reminder message. And that reminder message will tell you, hey, you haven't picked up your ballot, please do that. Then at about 2 minutes after the round begins, we're going to start pushing ballots from people who didn't accept onto other judges. And that's a really important part of the whole process, because if you haven't picked up a ballot, that means that your team is going to be fined $50 for a no-show. You don't want that. We don't want that. We want to make sure that the tournament runs smoothly. So please accept your ballot before then. If it is pushed, you should receive a notification, and these new judges will receive the ballots. Once all the ballots have been accepted, all of the judges that were scheduled for that time will receive a all clear notice, meaning, hey, all the ballots have been picked up. You're still on call until you receive that notice, meaning if it's 9:04 and you still haven't received a ballot, don't put down your phone and don't put down your computer thinking, well, I didn't get a ballot, I'm just going to go have breakfast. Please wait until you get that message that says all the ballots have been picked up, you're all good to go. So you're on call until you get that notification. That's sent out automatically once all the ballots have been picked up. And so these e-ballots will allow you to, if you're familiar with other in-person tournaments, they'll allow you to do the exact same thing that you're used to doing ranks and rates and feedback and all of that stuff. So we're going to go through what that looks like right now. Obviously, there's, as I mentioned before, there's no logins. You don't have to do anything special. All you need to do is just click the button. These other things are pretty important too. You can't change the ballot once you've submitted it. If you have some problems with your ballot, if you've submitted it, then, and there is a confirmation page. So once you have clicked the save button, the next step is to take you to this confirmation page saying, all right, are you sure all your scores are good? But once you've confirmed all of your scores, it's locked. And then if you need to change it, you have to contact me directly. So we would need to do that kind of behind the scenes. And then after the tournament, all the coaches will be able to view the e-ballots and send them to the students directly. Okay, so this is what an e-ballot looks like. So remember Sandra Day O'Connor, she got a message and it said, click here to accept the ballot. And then this is the ballot that pops up. And probably the most important thing that you're gonna notice is this giant big blue button that says live video room. When Sandra Day O'Connor clicks that button, that opens up an 8x8 room where all the competitors are waiting. So Sandra Day O'Connor would click that. That's probably the most important button because right next to it is this help button. And that help button lets us come to you. So if you're having help, we will come to you. Clicking that help button sends us, as a tournament director, tournament staff, it sends us a message saying, hey, someone's having trouble. And the way that we come to you is in this live video room. So we can't come to a web page, obviously, but we can go to an 8x8 room. And so this whole ballot, we will show up in the 8x8 room and we'll give you help there. On the left-hand side, you'll notice it tells you what event you're judging and what time, what round, those kind of pieces of information. So these are the important pieces right here, the live video room and the help. And then we need to discuss some feedback. So here is the feedback form. Now this is a drop-down menu. So you'll need to click it in order for the feedback form to drop down. This is the topic area. It's really important to write the topic area for two reasons. Number one, that helps keep things straight for you later on. So after the round, you're not confusing, especially after 3 days of judging, you're not confusing one speaker with another speaker. So we don't want to confuse Booker T. Washington's speech with Sally Ride's speech. And you want to make sure that everything is straight. So that's the topic area. That's where you write that in. It also helps coaches make sure that there weren't errors. So if you wrote down the wrong topic, then we can try to trace back and say, well, wait a minute, that's not what my student's speech was about. That was a different student, and we can try to solve problems that way. So the feedback form. This is the feedback form. When you click it, it will open up. And you'll see, first of all, you have a timer right here. So if you prefer to use your phone, you can do that, but we've got a timer built in for you. You can also type into this time field here. So if you do prefer to time on your phone, you can always just type in the time and save it that way. There's a comment field here. You've got bold, italics, underline, all sorts of information there. You can do little bullet lists, however you prefer, and kind of format it real nicely if you like. And so you can type in all of your feedback. There's the timer. There's the feedback form. So the next thing that's really important is the prompts. Some events will have prompts. So events like SPAR or Impromptu, they will have prompts preloaded into the ballot. This is a pretty important element. What's going to happen is that you're going to have the prompts saved onto your ballot, and you'll need to copy these and paste them into the video room where all the students are. We've preloaded them so that, in this case, John Adams is speaking here, and these are his prompts. And John Adams is, when you copy that section, you're only copying John Adams's prompts. You're not copying Sally Ride's prompts or Booker T. Washington's prompts. So we've tried to make it so that you won't accidentally spoil all of the prompts for some competitors. For those judges who aren't familiar with this, some events require a prompt in order for the student to base their speech off of, and the students don't know what that prompt is going to be until you reveal it to them. So Impromptu is an example of that. So those prompts are going to be loaded into this drop-down menu that you'll copy and you'll paste into the 8x8 room. The 8x8 room, I'm going to go over in just a minute, but it has a chat function, just like most of the virtual rooms that we've been using. There's a little chat room in the bottom left-hand corner. You click that, and that's where you'll paste the speaker prompts. All right, so you click right there to select the prompts, and then you'll have to copy all of it to the clipboard, and then you just paste it into the chat. Next is a no-show. Sometimes you might have a student who is who's a no-show. They're not there. So that will be a field as well. Please note, I'm going to go back 1 second to the prompts. Please note that not every ballot will have prompts, and it's only the events that require prompts that will have it. So if you're judging SPAR, if you're judging Impromptu, it will have a prompt field loaded in. But if you've got an event that doesn't have prompts, you won't see that. So if you're judging, for example, dramatic interp or public forum, there won't be a prompt window. Okay, let's move forward again. This no-show, when you click this lets the tournament know that the student is not in the round. Please take some time to look over to the left, and it's not on this screen, but you'll see the student's name off to the far left. And here, Queen does not have anything underneath her name. So if there is a DE, that stands for double enter. And if a student is double entered, that means that they might be doing more than one event in that pattern. So they might be doing Impromptu and duo. And if that's the case, please wait for them before clicking the no-show. But if you see that the student does not have a double entry notification and the round is kind of going on, maybe after the first speaker, you say, Queen has still not showed up. Then by clicking this no-show notification, it lets us know, hey, you click up there, and then you click that button. It sends us a notification that Queen is not there. That means we can now contact the coach and we can say, hey, coach, Queen is a no-show for round one. Is that the case? Are they not here? What's going on? We want to make sure that they're getting into their round if they're having trouble. Okay, and then we've got ranks and rates. Now, our tournament will not use ratings. That's the one on the far right side. We only use rankings, and we use a decimal, tie break, and things like that afterwards. So you will only need to determine who is first, who is second, who is third, fourth, and fifth. Even if there are 6 people, you start tying after 5th place. So you can see in this case, Sally Ride tied with Indiana Jones for 5th place. Kind of funny how we have all these historical figures, and then we've got Indiana Jones in there, huh? All right, so anyway, you'll be tying at 5th place. You don't need to worry about the rate or speaker points because we're not going to be using that. That's the one on the far right side. It will only be one column there. And then you'll click the confirm ballot on the lower right-hand corner. Once you do that, it's going to take you to a review page. And that review page looks like this. It'll say, all right, here's what you've written. Underneath each competitor, right now it says in/A, but once you fill out the format, it will have all the feedback that you've written for each person. And it'll have kind of a summary of everything that you've written out. Then you'll click Save Ballot on the right, on the bottom right, and that will, right there, that will save the ballot. Then you'll see these palm trees. We tell everybody, keep going till you see the palm trees. One of the big problems is that people only hit that first button and they never hit the second confirmation page. So keep going till you see the palm trees. At that point, once you see the palm trees, your ballot is locked. And as I mentioned before, if you have any changes that you need to make, you'll have to contact the tournament staff directly in order to make those changes. All right, so I'm going to pause here. I'll come back in. Are there any questions that you have about the e-ballot process? Cyrus's mom, you still have your hand raised. I'm not sure if you have a new question or if that's still your hand up from before. Monica, I see your hand is up. Monica, do you have a question?
Yeah,
I do.
Well, let's go to Monica first, and I'll come back to Cyrus's mom.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So my question is about the e-ballots. You say that we will receive about 10 minutes before, the actual round starts. So I will know my students like 10 minutes before, and the type of category that I'm judging just like 10 minutes before, or do I have a earlier notifications?
So yes, you'll know about 10 minutes before what event that you're judging. Because this tournament is so big, we have over 250 judges at this tournament, and we have over 650 competitors. This tournament is huge. So if we try to pre-arrange everything, there's just too many moving parts. People's schedules change and things like that. So I can't predetermine what everyone is going to be judging. It's too big of a boat to be able to do that for. But one other field that was not mentioned on the slideshow, which I will tell you will be on your ballot, are the event rules. So if you get into an event that you're not super familiar with, there will be another drop-down menu that says event rules. Something else that will happen on the e-ballot that was made after this slideshow was created is each ballot will have a tutorial. So the first time you go to the ballot, it will say, let me walk you through this. And it kind of just shows you exactly what I showed you. You can skip it if you don't want to watch it. But the first time you see a ballot, it will show you this tutorial. And if you ever want to see the tutorial again, there's a little button that says, play that tutorial. And you click the tutorial button and it will run you through the whole thing again. But in answer to your direct question, yes, you'll know what event you're judging about 10 minutes beforehand. And the students will be sent the same way that the judges are sent an e-ballot. The students will be sent e-postings. And so they will get a notification that says, here's your room. Now, they won't have an e-ballot. They will just click that one button, and it takes them directly to their 8x8 room where they're going to be waiting for you as the judge.
Okay, perfect. And do I have any extra minutes after the tournament round is over to submit the e-ballots?
Yeah, of course. It's kind of like any normal in-person tournament. You have a few minutes, but I should note, if you're taking a long time, we, as the tournament director, we will start notifying you. We'll send you an email or a text, depending on what you've put in your roster. So we use that roster to reach out to judges. And we'll notify you, hey, you're taking a long time and you're kind of holding up the tournament. We need that ballot back. And at that point, you need to start wrapping it up because you're taking a long time to fill out ballots. I should also note that this tournament, because we have to kind of keep moving, if there are people that are holding up the tournament for whatever reason, we do have a delay of tournament fee. And so how that works is we'll notify you. We'll say, hey, this is your warning. And if you continue to delay the tournament after that, then there will be a delay of tournament fee that's levied against your school. So we want to make sure that people aren't taking too long. But yeah, of course, you've got some time. You'll have, 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes to be able to fill things out.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I think Cyrus's mom had a question, right?
Right. So in the last tournament, when I had more than 5 people, I had like 6 people in the room, and I did exactly what you said. When I got to 5th place, I tied, the last 2 for 5th place. I actually got a call or somebody started talking on my screen that, okay, now between these 2 that you rated as 5th place, which one would you rate as 6th? And
you bring up a great point, and that's a failure on my part to mention. We rank to 5th place for the prelim rounds, but for final rounds, we do rank all the way out. So if there's 6 people in the final round, then we would rank to 6. If there's 7 people because of a tie, then you would rank to 7. And that will be indicated automatically on your ballot. So you're going to, at a certain point, have to tie. The ballot won't let you put a 6th place for a prelim. But in a final round, you'll notice, you're going to have to go to 6th. You're going to have to go to 7th. So I apologize. That's on my part that I didn't make that more clear as I was explaining it to you. But that's probably the situation that happened is somebody didn't set that up right at that tournament. And they just said, rank to 5th place for elimination rounds. And then they went, oops, we messed up. We actually need to find out who would you have given the 6 to so we can do this correctly.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
I saw there were some other questions. If you want to raise your virtual hand, Ms. Parker, I have some. It looks like you have a question. Be sure to unmute your audio.
Just a quick question. When you have the all clear notification, will that go out to people on standby as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
If you are scheduled for that round, then you will get an all clear notice. So if you, let's say that you're a judge who's only judging on Sunday, you should not be getting notifications on Friday or Saturday. If you are getting notifications, then let us know, because that means that you've been scheduled for rounds and you kind of dodged a bullet, but you probably won't dodge that bullet for long, because eventually you're going to get a ballot and you don't think that you're scheduled for that day, and you actually are. So if you are getting those notifications, let us know and we'll try to take care of that. Jen, looks like you have a question.
Yes. So I think what I understand is we could be judging any type of competition. It could be Lincoln Douglas, it could be public forum, it could be Congress. Anything is fair play, right?
Sort of. Your coach has designated what type of events that they want you to judge. And so I've literally triple checked every single judge in this entire tournament, gone through each one individually, made sure that the schedule is aligned with what the coach initially submitted, and made sure that the events are correct based off of what the coach initially submitted. So I've personally triple checked every single judge in this entire tournament. If there are problems, that means that the way that you were submitted was incorrect. So I have to go based off of what was actually submitted. And then there could be fees that, I'm basing all of the fees for each school off of what the coach submits. So if you aren't supposed to be judging something, then we need to work that out, and there might be fees that would, that the team would be penalized for.
Okay.
Raj, looks like you have a question.
Yes, I do. Thanks. I'm pretty new to this. I was wondering if there are any YouTube links or any materials that we could view regarding the ballot process and or the judging criteria and how it goes, because 10 minutes isn't really that long for us to be trying to absorb that material at the time.
So in terms of like a judging criterion, I'm hesitant to give that, and I've always been hesitant to give that. I know new judges are they want that. They want to know, well, what am I looking for? And I can rattle off a few things that I look for, but then Coach Parker might be sitting here going, I disagree with that. That's not something that I would look for in my students. And so what I try to remind people is that if you're an American citizen, you have the right to sit on a trial jury and potentially put someone to death. You have your own criterion, and you know what you're looking for. So you have that responsibility already built in as parts of our society. So when you're watching around, you know what you're looking for. And even new judges know what they're looking for. They just don't know they know what they're looking for. So in that way, you're going to look at the performances that are put in front of you, and you decide based on your rubric of what you think works and what you think doesn't. I'm sure if you reach out to the coach from your academy or your school, they'll probably give you all sorts of advice in terms of what they prefer to look for. And I'm happy to discuss that with you, behind the scenes as well, and tell you what I look for. But I'm hesitant to give out that kind of information. And I'm sorry, that was a two-part question. I answered the last part, but now I've forgotten the first part of your question. Can you repeat what you had said at the beginning?
Yes, with respect to the, you mentioned that there was some help on the actual application that you could, go in and it would walk you through it. But you doing it at the time seems to be kind of like it's a bit late to be doing that. Is there any way to view that beforehand so we don't have to do it at the last minute?
What I'm going to do is, so you asked about the e-ballots. The e-ballots, if you need a refresher on that, this video will be available on YouTube, so you can come back and watch this video again if you need to. At the time, at the current status right now, there's not the ability to send out a test e-ballot. So we're working on that for future tournaments, but right now it doesn't exist. And so the first ballot that you get will be an actual ballot, but it's really pretty straightforward. You can rewatch this video. In terms of material for the actual events, I'm going to discuss that in a few minutes. I'm going to give you a place where you can go that's going to give you way more than you'd like, and you can review all of that before this weekend.
Thank you.
Looks like Tian, it looks like you have a question.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So, do I know approximately like what time should I be on computer, check email, certain period or like timeline?
So you'll need to check with your coach to confirm what schedule they had
Or
signed
what
you up
day?
for.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and then once you've got that, then you'll say, all right, well, I know these times are when I'm supposed to judge, and the coach can also give you the schedule for the tournament, and then you want to start checking your text or your email about 10 minutes before each round, because that's when the ballots will be sent out. So you'll have to be in contact with your coach to try to find out when they scheduled you.
Oh,
Pramesh,
okay.
Pramesh, looks like you have a question.
Oh, yeah. And
Yes.
you cannot be like a visitor in Congress or public forum. Just not there's a non-computer.
So one of the things that we've done is we've actually we've tried to protect. Okay, because we're dealing with so many minors, we've protected the rooms that we're using. So all of those are protected, and only people who are supposed to be in that room will have access to those rooms. They're all hashed, and you'll notice that the name of the room will be impossible to predict. So what the answer to that is, we really don't want other people in those rooms who aren't supposed to be there. Okay. However, if grandma wants to spectate, it's okay to do, so long as they're not holding up the tournament. Congress is tough because you can see we have like 20 or 30 people in this room right now, but most everybody's video is on mute. If everyone unmuted their video all at once, that will slow this room down tremendously, and you'll have a lot of lagging. So for Congress, you probably do not want to observe, but for some of the other events that only have a few people in them, you probably could get away with having a few people. But the best thing to do is probably just have them be in the room with the competitor while they're performing, and they could be watching their performance.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'm sorry, Pramesh, it looks like you had a question.
Yes. Can we have access to E-ballot website in advance so we can familiarize with all the available options?
So as I mentioned before, right now the ability to send out a test ballot doesn't exist, but this video does, so you can come back and watch the video. And I understand that need. We tried to get a test ballot put together, but it's incredibly difficult. I've been working with Danny, who you saw earlier, and he's showing me the code of just how all that works, and it's a labyrinth of impossibilities. So we tried to get something together before this tournament, but it's just it was too hard for us to manage in this time frame. But the actual tournament ballot is I think you're not going to have too much trouble with it. You can always rewatch this video, and that should answer a lot of the questions. Coach Parker, you had a question? You're muted. Can you unmute your video?
You'd think I hadn't done this before. Hi, everybody. I think the last two gentlemen were wanting to study up ahead of time on the event rules. And I think that you mentioned that you're about to get to that. Is that correct?
Yeah, I have a whole, that's what I want to cover last.
Right. So I'll save my comment till then. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. And it looks like we have one more question. Raj?
Just a quick one. Just to confirm, my understanding is that you, at this present time, you can only spectate debates, or that your student is participating in. Is it possible to spectate events that any of your coaches' students are participating in?
So whenever we send out the postings to the competitors, so at the start of each round, we send out emails or texts to each individual competitor. But one of the other things that we do is we send a summary list of every single competitor that's on your team, and we send that to all of the coaches for that school. So for example, Coach Parker might have, let's say, 15 competitors that are in round one, and all of those competitors will get their own individual room placements, but then Coach Parker will get a summary email with all of their names and all of their rooms and all of their speaker positions, speaker number 1 or speaker number 3. And so if you want to watch something, you could contact Coach Parker and say, hey, I want to watch poetry. And she could send you that room and you could go that way. But again, we don't put this out publicly. It's all internal. We want to keep only our people there, and that's done for privacy protection. And we have a lot of minors, and we take it very, very seriously that we do not want online predators or anything like that having access to minors. We have some of the youngest people that we have are barely 10 years old, and I take that as a personal responsibility of protecting them and making sure that we've gone through all of the steps to make sure that they don't have access to anybody outside our group.
No, thank you. That's very understandable and correct.
Okay, so if there aren't any other further questions, I think the next thing that we need to do is I think we want to start talking about events, if I'm not mistaken. Let me make sure I'm not missing anything. Oh, before I do move forward, one other element I want to mention is that the awards ceremony will also be live to YouTube. So on that Sunday, we will send out everybody in the entire tournament, everyone who is associated with the tournament. We will send you a link to a YouTube video where you can watch the award ceremony, and it will be in an 8x8 room just like this, and we'll kind of we'll announce all of the awards to everybody. There is a way for us to actually have the competitors on screen while we're doing the awards, but we opted to not do that. Number one, it's a little too complicated to try to manage with a tournament this size, and number two, we just felt like, again, from a protection standpoint, having minors up on screen is probably not the best idea. So unfortunately, you're gonna have to look at my face for a little while and some of the other tab staff, so they'll be announcing the awards. But we do have the ability to have students in a room where you can see their faces, you can see their reactions, but we're opting to not do that for this tournament. So the next thing I want to talk about is the actual 8x8 room. So that's where we are right now. Obviously, all of you here are somewhat familiar with it because you made it here, but there might be some people on YouTube who aren't as familiar with it. There's a few things that I want to go over with you. You'll notice that the whole 8x8 room is pretty stripped down. It's pretty simple to understand. I'm going to kind of point at a few things. Right in the middle here, if I'm on your full screen, if you've toggled the viewpoint, I should be taking up your entire screen right now. In the middle right here are these three buttons, and it should be in the middle is a big red button. If you click that, you'll leave this room. So obviously you don't want to do that right now. And it looks like many of you have already muted your audio and your video. So you'll have two options on either side. One is to mute the audio, the other is to mute the video. If you hold the space bar, you will unmute your audio so that you can speak. And then when you release the space bar, you'll go back to mute. So you can stay muted and then hit that. We are asking that during the round, don't mute yourself. We've done a lot of testing on this, and we've found that most judges, they want to just be, they want to be, oh, I don't want anyone to see me or anything like that. But it's really important for the competitors to get feedback, like the nonverbal feedback, even just seeing the judge's eyes. If you're slowing down the tournament, then of course, if you're getting laggy, if you're dropping or something like that, then please do mute your video, especially. But if possible, please make yourself visible and encourage the competitors to do the same. So we don't want people to mute themselves unless it's slowing down the stability of the tournament. In this room right now, if you wouldn't mind, you can go ahead and mute your video, because if everybody starts unmuting, then all of a sudden the whole thing will start getting really, really laggy. Over here on, let's see, on this. We had somebody who popped in just for a second. I think it's on this side. I should be pointing at the correct side if I'm not mistaken. Over here should be three different buttons. One of them is the hand button. That's to raise your hand. So if you have a question, you can do that. So let's try that. Everybody in the room, if you would, go ahead and click that hand button so we can see that you are recognizing it. All right, we've got some people coming in. If everybody could do it, that would help. That way I know you're having trouble. No, you're not having trouble, actually. It's weird. You're raising your hand to prove you don't have trouble. Okay, and then if you could, go ahead and turn those off. Great. All right, so we got a couple of still on. That's good. Next to that is there's a little window, looks like a cartoon bubble with a little speaker thing coming off of it. That's our chat window. You don't need to start typing in the chat right away, but that's where you'll paste the prompts. So if you need to paste prompts, that's where you'll do it. So you'll also notice there's the ability to share your screen with the competitors. You shouldn't need to use that for the tournament. Over here on this side, On this side, there are 3 different options. The first is a little, it's the toggle view, so it should be 4 squares. When you click that, that will bring either my face, because I'm the main speaker, full screen, or if you click it, it will put everybody into a tile view. So I'm going to ask for a minute that you put me full screen. Sorry to do that to you guys. I'm sorry you have to look at my face full screen. Wish I had something more pleasant, but it's me. So on the side over here, you will notice, if I'm pointing correctly, it should be everybody else listed in the room. But I want to point something out to you. When you're watching a speech, something that's really, really handy is down here at the bottom, there should be a little arrow. It's a tiny little arrow. And if you click that, all of these videos will go away. And if you can't find that arrow, one thing you can do is you just hit the F button, as in Frank. If you hit F, in full mode, all of those videos will disappear so that you can focus solely on that competitor while they're speaking and not be distracted by other people as they're kind of moving around. That only changes your view. That doesn't change what the competitors see. The competitors have to change their own view, and they can set up however they prefer. But that's your view, so you can focus in on each competitor one at a time. Okay, also down in this corner, I believe, if I'm pointing correctly, I'm backwards, so I want to make sure I'm pointing it the right way. You'll also notice the letter I with a circle around it. That's going to be important. If you can click on that, one of the things that you'll notice is that it says dial in, and then after that, there's a phone number. If competitors are having really, really bad connection problems, and believe me, there will be connection problems this weekend. It happens at almost every tournament. If they are having connection problems, after repeated attempts, one of the things they can do is they can phone into the conference room. So they can dial that phone number, and the phone number is there. There's even, if you click more numbers, there's even a list of phone numbers they can call. One of them is a 1-800 number. And then they need to enter a PIN number. So there's a PIN that shows up, and they'll have to enter all of that in. So if you can get that to them, the PIN, and they dial that phone number, then they can call in and perform their speech audibly. Now, obviously, that's not ideal, and that should really only be used as a last-ditch effort to try to get them to speak. We do not prefer that, and we don't want to use that as a first line of defense. But if for nothing else, they could at least phone in their speech. They're literally phoning it in. On the right-hand side, you have a few other things. The 3 little dots, those 3. You can mute everyone, so you can see that. You can play with some of those things, some of those little, what am I trying to say, settings. One thing that I do want to point out to you, if you could come back to the tile view and look at everybody individually. One of the things, and I shouldn't say individually, everybody collectively, that's what I'm trying to say. So if you're going to go to the tile view where you can see everyone, one of the things you'll notice is that on each individual person in the room, there are 3 dots in the upper, it might be this corner, upper right-hand corner. So if you click that, if you find anybody in the room, if you click it, you have a few options here. You can either mute them, you can mute everyone else but them, you can send them a private message, or you can adjust their particular volume. So if you have a competitor in the room who's being particularly loud, or they've got a dog or something like that, you can mute them so that you can focus on what needs to be said. Obviously, you should not be muting someone during their competition. If that happens, if competitors are muting or something like that, we need to notify the tournament staff so we can speak to their coach. When you do mute someone, there is a notification that goes out to the entire group. So we actually had a competitor one time who was going through muting other people during their performances, which is very problematic, but it clearly said who was muting everyone. So we knew who it was, and it wasn't an accident. They kept doing it and kept trying to kind of troll everybody in the round. So we can notify that coach, we can reprimand that student and take action about it. So those are all the different settings of 8x8. As I said, it's pretty straightforward. Are there any questions about 8x8? And I should note that Rinky and Dino, you both have your hands still up. Is that because you have a question, or because I wasn't sure if you still had questions or not?
Sorry, but we're not allowed to record it, right?
Hang on one second, Tan. I'm sorry, Rinky, did you have a question?
No, sorry, I didn't.
Okay.
I'll lower my hand.
All right. Taehyun, no, there is no recording that is permitted. Obviously, we can't, how do we prevent you from doing that on your end? Well, we can't. I can't come into your house and kick your door open and prevent you from capturing what's going on. But our official league rules say no recording of rounds. So you are not permitted to do that. And that would, mean punitive action.
Zoom has a recording button. That's why Zoom has a recording button, but I don't see the button.
That's right. So there is no recording that should be happening of the round. So Rinky, looks like now you do have a question. Your hand is back up.
God, sorry. I think I'm having trouble with the button. I apologize.
Not a problem at all. Just wanted to make sure. Okay. And then looks like Dino, you had a question?
No, sorry. I had a problem with my button as well. Sorry.
A lot of button problems today. That's good. That's fine. All right. And then Simon, looks like you have a question.
Hi. I was wondering if judge has a internet connection problem. Could judge call for that number and put the PIN number to use it as well?
They could, but the catch is that the judge is going to have to go into the room to get that PIN. So you're going to have to connect at least initially in order to get that PIN. That PIN is different for every single room. So every time you go to an 8x8 room, that PIN is always different. I can't tell everyone what the PIN will be. So if you go in there, if you're having that bad of a connection, yes, you could. But really at that point, I mean, if the round has been going on and you're having that connection, we may have to resort to that. But please notify us if you're having that severe of an internet connection problem. I do want to refer to everybody to another document, and then we're going to move on to, after this, we're going to move on to the actual events. But this is our best practice guide, and this is on the tournament registration page, that forensicstournament.net page that I was showing you earlier. And this is really important. I've sent this to all of the coaches, and I want to make sure that they've sent it out to you as well. If you need it, then I can give it to you after this. But this talks about all the different recommended devices and everything else. It's 7 pages long, and it's really broken down pretty nicely and tries to give you some pointers on how to do all that. It kind of breaks it down. If you're a competitor, here's what to expect, and as a coach, what to expect. What I want to go through is, as a judge, what to expect. So we recommend that judges use a computer. Mobile devices can be kind of difficult to do, but some judges prefer it. We don't disallow it, but we prefer that they use a computer so that they can manage both the live 8x8 room and their e-ballot at the same time. And then we've already talked about sending out a message for the e-ballot. That's number 2. This third one is really important. All internet connectivity is the responsibility of the competitor. I know we're not supposed to just read from text like this, but I'm going to do it anyway. For memorized events, multiple attempts to restart the speech may be made, but the round should not be significantly delayed because of it. It may be necessary to skip a speaker and move on to another competitor. So if you've got someone in a DI round and halfway through they drop out, then you may need to restart their speech. And if they're okay starting from where they dropped out, then that's fine. If they need to restart from the beginning, that's fine too. But they should not significantly delay the tournament. If that happens, it's ultimately a disqualification for the competitor. And refer back to the first sentence. All internet connectivity is the responsibility of the competitor. And then in debate events, we would start prep time. So if I drop out in the middle of my speech, then we would start prep time immediately. Once all the prep time has been exhausted, then the speech time begins and the debate starts continuing. After 5 minutes of total time absent, it's a forfeit. And then in limited prep events, we give them a grace period of 30 seconds to be able to refresh their page due to connectivity problems. So if they drop out, if they freeze, then start a 30-second grace period. If they fail multiple times, then they can use that dial-in service. Here's the 1-800 number. I put that in there because I felt like that was probably the free number. And then just entering in the PIN. So we've just discussed about that. I recommend that you toggle the tile view. That's what I said before, so that the competitor who is speaking is taking up the majority of the screen. That may be different in a debate event. In a debate event, you may need to see everybody at the same time. Remember what I said too, if you press the F button, then all the other competitor screens can go away. And then I recommend that you stay in the virtual room until you finish filling out the e-ballot. And that's so that if we have trouble with you, we can just go to that e-room and then talk with you and say, hey, what's going on? Are you having issues or something like that? And we have to make sure that we are in good communication with the judges. Down here, if judges are having trouble with their e-ballots, you can always go to the help room. And as I said before, if you click that help button, then we will bring the help room to you. So a lot of time, I'm anticipating that the help room this weekend will be very, very packed. This says SCJFL help, but that's not the help room that we'll be using. The help room this weekend is CMSF help, which is California Middle School Forensics help. I've sent that out to the coaches. I'll probably have somebody open up this room too, just in case someone accidentally goes to this help room. But what I'm anticipating is that so many people go to the help room, it's overwhelmed, and it may be easier for you to just summon help to your room, because we'll have people going out to the rooms as well that aren't just hanging out in the 8x8 help room. And then for final rounds, make sure that you wait for all of the judges. So there's 3 judges, and then one of them will be designated a chair, and that's the person who kind of runs the round. And then they should be the one that actually starts to make sure that all 3 judges are there, and that that all the judges have finished writing before they move on to the next competitor. Judges should not confer. In other words, if you're a final round judge, you should not be discussing your ranks and your placements with other judges. All of that should be done privately and independently from the other judges. Final round judges are expected to rank there independently according to the judge's room. So that's kind of what I just mentioned. All right, so that's the best practices guide. Are there any questions about the best practices guide? Yeah, Kai?
Yeah, I have questions about your bullet point number 1.
Yeah.
Since this is the first time we're going to be using this, just in case, if something goes wrong, can I use my mobile device for the video conferencing and use my Chromebook for the e-ballot?
Yeah, absolutely. That's not a problem. You can do that. And there are some people who kind of prefer to do that. You might have an iPad and you prefer to watch on the iPad while you're typing out notes on a computer. That's perfectly fine. You can do it however you like. We just recommend that you use a laptop, but you're going to find your own system. And even after round 1, you might say, you know what, I have a better idea. This is how I want to do it. And you can kind of mix that up a little bit. Any other questions?
So
yeah, go ahead.
Is it possible you can push out the e-ballot both through text and email, so that way we have devices?
No, we can't do both, but you can just send it to yourself. So the link will be good for you until you confirm everything all the way through. So if you get it in email, you can just send it to yourself via text, or if you get it in text, you can copy and paste it into an email. So however you prefer, you can get it and then send it to yourself, and then the link will still work until you click confirm with all those scores. That's when it gets locked.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay, if there's no more questions about the best practices guide, then I want to move on to the actual events. Any questions about that? Great. Let's move into the actual events. So this might be a little overwhelming, and I don't mean for it to be, because I know we're learning a lot of information, and your brains can only soak in so much information at a time. But I want to first of all explain why you're seeing 2 different names. You're seeing SCJFL and CMSF. And the SCJFL is the Southern California Junior Forensics League, and that's kind of the parent organization for the California Middle School Forensics League. And so when you see they're related organizations. So one of the things I want to point out to you is the scjfl.org website. So you might want to write that down, SCJFL, Southern California Junior Forensic League. And when you go here, this website, one of the tabs that you'll see is the rules and bylaws. So if you need the rules and bylaws that we'll be using, that's where they are. So you can go see them. Now, I will forewarn you, this is a big, long document that you probably, I mean, this is not light reading. So it's 50-something pages long, and I don't expect that you're going to read all of that. And I hope that you don't. I had to write it, so I know the pain. But what I will show you is the stuff that is more germane to you. So here's the bylaws, and I've moved down to page 9 because you don't care about a lot of the other stuff, I'm sure. But here on page 9 is where we start getting into the event descriptions and the guidelines. And here's the rules that you'll see. So each event has a set of rules that are prescribed for it, and these rules will be what's put on the ballots that we send out to you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each of these events one by one and just kind of give you a brief overview of what happens. And all of the events that we have are divided into 3 different groups. There's limited preparation events, there's platform events, and there's interpretation events. So once again, limited prep, platform, and interpretation. So limited preparation events are those events I was mentioning before, where students may not be totally, they're not, I shouldn't say not prepared. They might be prepared, but they don't know what their speech is going to be about until they get to the tournament. Our league designates debate to be a limited preparation event, meaning they can prepare, but only to a certain extent. They have to respond to what the other team says. So that's limited prep. A platform speech is a typically memorized speech that was originated by the competitor. In other words, the competitor wrote it, the competitor memorized it. This is what most people typically think of when they think of public speaking. This is kind of like a TED Talk that they originated. And then the last set of events is interpretation. This is where they are using other people's literature to perform. This is very similar to acting, not quite the same, but strikingly similar, where you are pulling in poetry or a short story and you are performing that. So those are the three different categories. Now I'm going to go into what each event specifically does. So we're going to start here with impromptu. Impromptu, you can see here's all the events, or all of the descriptions for the rules. You can see that they are allowed, like timing starts when they're accepting a topic sheet. So impromptu, here's what happens is in impromptu, each competitor is given a different prompt. They're given 3 actually, and they get to select one of those prompts to deliver a speech from. And their time, I'm going to show you down here. So speakers have a total of 7 minutes for both preparation and speaking. So they get to use that time however they like. They might decide to prepare for 2 minutes and deliver a 5-minute speech. They could prepare 1 minute and give a 6-minute speech. They could, you know, if their prompt was roller coasters, they could prepare for 6 minutes and 59 seconds and stand up in the last second and scream roller coasters. I'm not sure they would win, but they could do that. So they can divide up their time however they like. And you're giving them the prompts from your e-ballot. Again, they can use a 4x6 note card. And so all of the specifics of impromptu are kind of listed here. Extemporaneous is very similar to impromptu. The difference is that here, students are asked a question, and this is done before they come to your room. So students will be asked a question in an extemp prep room, and they'll all be there together, and there will be an extemp proctor. That's not going to be any of you. So I have the extemp proctor already. They will be given, they will give the competitors one of 3 questions. The competitors will select one, and they will have 30 minutes to research a speech, and then they will come deliver a maximum 7-minute speech to you in the room. So they will be doing all the prep either in the prep room or offline, and then come in and deliver the speech in front of you. So you don't need to give them a prompt for extemp because that will already be given to them. Moving down is Congress. Congress has a lot of rules, and so you're welcome to read a lot of this, but the short and skinny of it is that this is where the competitors come in and they are role-playing as either senators or representatives in a mock U.S. Congress. And so they all have bills that have been issued, bills or resolutions that they will kind of debate and discuss. And so there's a bunch of information here. Most of this is not going to be germane to you as a judge. If you're judging Congress, most likely you have opted to judge Congress and you know a lot of this stuff. These rules are too big to put on the ballot. So if you have questions about it, I can show you where this is if you didn't write it down already, if you judge Congress and you feel like you're in over your head. I should also point out that we won't have that many Congress judges for this weekend. So I wouldn't stress this. And if you don't feel comfortable judging Congress, just let me know and we'll find somebody else because we have plenty of Congress judges. Lincoln Douglas. One of the things here for Lincoln Douglas, you'll notice how small the rules actually are for Lincoln Douglas. A lot of people think that there is a lot of information to go across in Lincoln Douglas. And I want to point out, I like to illustrate, most of that is convention. And there are a lot of things that are convention that people think are rules. The rules are actually specifically designed to be open-ended so that people can have really any sort of approach that they want. There is a topic that both teams have already prepared for. And down here, you'll see the speech times. So that's all kind of laid out here. And that should be on your ballot as well. So we'll put those times in for LD if you're judging Lincoln Douglas. Don't worry about policy debate because we've hired specific judges to judge policy, and they will only be judging policy. So if you are new to debate, you will not be getting a policy ballot at all. Don't worry about that. Big questions debate is similar to Lincoln Douglas. And again, here's all the rules for how that debate will work. And here's the times for big questions. They have a different resolution than Lincoln Douglas. And then SPAR. SPAR is something that many of you probably will debate, or judge. I shouldn't say debate. Hopefully you're not debating. You're going to be judging. There are a lot of SPAR competitors at this tournament. And so this is a very quick, fast style of debate. You can see the times down here. They are given a topic, and they have 2 minutes to prepare that topic. So again, on your ballot, it'll have those prompts. You'll copy those and paste those into the chat. The pro side, whoever you elect to be pro, and you can flip a coin to decide who's going to be pro and who's going to be con. And you can say, you know, I should back up. Let me make sure, because I don't think I'm explaining this fully. Let me come back here and explain this. In SPAR, you're going to have 6 people in the room. So let me do it like this. You're going to have 6 people in the room, and you should just take the first 2 competitors, and you're going to say, all right, George and Steven, you guys are going to be debating each other. And you can flip a coin to determine who's going to be pro and who's going to be con. And then in your e-ballot, there will be, in those prompts, there will be 3 topics that they can choose. You'll copy those and paste those into the chat. So those prompts are not known to the competitors before the event begins. So they look at those and they decide, well, what do I want to debate about? Do I want to debate about this, or do I want to debate about that? There are 3 of them. Pro gets to strike 1. Con gets to strike 1, and whichever one is left is the one that they'll actually end up using. So once they've decided what topic, then you have these times. So let me show you those times again. Then you'll have these times. They have 2 minutes to prepare. Then pro will come up for a speech not to exceed 2 minutes. Then con, 2 minutes. Then they have a crossfire. The crossfire is the chance for them to ask questions of one another. They can ask really any question that they'd like. And I should also note that the other competitors in the room can also ask questions. I want to be very clear that only the other competitors can ask questions. The judge cannot ask questions. Spectators are not allowed to ask questions. Only the competitors in that room can ask questions. So that's who can ask. And then we go back to pro for another 2-minute speech and con for another 2-minute speech. We're not offering dialectic.
Oh, excuse me.
Hey, let me just finish this, and then I'll take questions at the end of this section.
Could you show me the page that actually has that information?
Yeah, I'll show it to you in just a minute. Let me come back to it. And then the last thing here is public forum debate. And so public forum debate, again, here's all the rules that we use. And in these rules, here's the times again. So they have their own resolution that's specific to them that they've already prepared for. They'll speak for 4, 4, 3, 4. This is pretty standard if you follow the NSDA guidelines. This is the same kind of same thing that they're doing. We're using the same resolution as well. So those are all of the limited prep events. So I'm going to break here and come back. So are there any questions? You said that someone said that they wanted to know where to find those rules. So let me show you that really quickly. So where you would go is to scjfl.org, all right, scjfl.org, and it's right here under the rules and bylaws. So when you click that, it will open up a page, and you can either scroll page by page like this, or what I find to be much easier is to just click this download searchable PDF, and it will open up, and here's a table of contents. And then if you look over here, you can see event rules is on page, it's from pages 9 to 21. So keep in mind, most events will have the rules already posted on the ballots, and that's taken from our bylaws so that you don't need to go there. But if you do need to go back there, that's where they are, is SCJFL rules and bylaws. Okay, Raj, was that your question, or did you have a different question?
I have a different question.
Sure.
It's pretty simple. On the SPAR debates, we mentioned that the crossfire questions are open to all the students participating. Is that organized by the judge? The judge gets to select who gets to speak when, otherwise it'll get chaotic.
Yeah.
How does that work?
That's a tough one, and our bylaws don't actually say either. And I've talked to coaches on both sides of the fence, like, should that be done by the judge or should that be done by the competitor? Personally, I'm more on the lines of, like, the competitors should recognize if there's someone who is trying to speak. But what I'll tell you in practice, what I've done is, if I see someone who's had their hand up for a while and is trying to ask a question from the audience who isn't in that particular debate but has a question, then I'll usually remind the competitors. I'll say, you have someone in the audience who is trying to ask a question. and that's all I'll input. Because we really want to try to minimize the amount of role play that the judge has in the round, because it's really up to the competitors. The job of the judge should really be to observe and to take in what the competitors are doing and not try to influence the round. So that would be the best practice, I would say, is let the competitors do it. And if there is someone who is struggling and not being recognized, you might remind the competitors that they're ignoring someone who has a question. There's a guest.
Okay, so in this case, when we say audience, those are fellow competitors that aren't actually part of the bar, correct?
Yeah, I'm sorry if that was confusing. Yes, that's correct. So that would be competitors in the room. Yes. There's a guest who has a question, but I can't see a name.
Hi, Robert. This is Cecilia.
Hi, Cecilia.
Hi. My question is, for any of the forms we are not familiar with to judge, are we, the judges, control the time limit for the competitors, or they are? So we have to find out the timesheet for each form.
Wonderful question. Thank you so much for bringing that up, because I was about to forget time signals. I should mention time signals. So the times will be listed on the event rules. And in debate, oftentimes it's helpful to ask the competitors to time themselves, and that's permissible, but you have the timer that's on the screen. So you are ultimately responsible for keeping the time for the round. You could ask other competitors in the room to be a time signal giver, because it's a lot to ask for a judge to be focusing on the e-ballot, focusing on the performance, and focus on some time. I get that that's pretty stressful. So it's totally appropriate to say to another competitor in the room, hey, George, would you mind giving time signals to everyone else? And do you have a stopwatch or something like that that you can give time signals to? And so George should be giving time signals if it's too much for you to handle. But you should be, for some events, you should be giving time signals. That would be all of the limited prep events that we just discussed. Typically, what you would want to do is give verbal time signals during prep time. So if there's impromptu and it's quiet and they're not looking at their screen, you'll need to verbally say 1 minute used, 2 minutes used, something like that. Once they've started their speech, you shouldn't be talking in the middle of their speech. That's obviously pretty rude and distracting. So at that point, you would just hold up time signals with your hands to indicate how much time they have remaining. So that would be 1 minute left. The 30-second mark is usually either this or this. That kind of makes more sense to me, like a 3, because the 10-second mark is usually that. And then the most important for them usually is the last few seconds. So it's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, shut up. So that's usually what I try to encourage people to land right there. All events have a 30-second grace period. So they are permitted to go beyond 30 seconds. And if they go beyond that 30 seconds, they are not allowed to take first place in that round. So you should note on the ballot if they go beyond that 30 seconds to let us know, and don't rank them first place if they're going beyond that 30-second grace period. Did that answer your question? Did I say that?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, Cyrus, mom? Was there a question?
No.
Oh, your screen is actually still on the bylaw, not showing your video.
My video should be up. You can't see my video?
No, I'm seeing like a limited preparation events shared screen. And none of what you explained was matching what's on the screen.
Your connection may be a little laggy.
Is other people saw matching?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think everybody else can see me. I should be viewable.
Okay.
You may need to refresh your page. All right. Are there any other questions regarding limited prep?
No.
Okay. So I'm going to move on. I'm going to talk about platform speeches now. I'm going to go back to the bylaws, which is going to be confusing for him when he comes back in and he says, wait a minute, we're still there. All right. So let's go back down here. All right, we talked about debate already, so let's go down to platform. So again, these are speeches that the competitors wrote themselves, and you can see there are 3 that we'll be offering this weekend. The first is informative speaking. This one I really want to call everyone's attention to because there is something that's kind of tricky with informative speaking. Now, on the face of it, it should be pretty easy. An original factual speech by the competitor that's meant to inform. Okay, great. The problem is this time limit right here. So the maximum time is 5 minutes. That is not the case for this weekend. This weekend, the maximum time is 10 minutes long. Because of that rule change, we tried to accommodate, so let me back up. The national board changed their time from 5 minutes to 10 minutes, and our league has not met to officially change that ruling in our bylaws. However, we felt like it would really hurt a lot of students who were planning on going to nationals with a 10-minute speech, so we decided to change that for this weekend, since all 5-minute speeches would still fit within that. So informative speech is the one event where the time is, it's actually 10 minutes, and we're asking for judges to please consider that there may be speeches that are 5 minutes that were designed under this old 5-minute time limit. And that's because of a change that happened at the national level. Down here is original oratory / persuasive speaking. So this is a original speech that's intended to persuade about a problem in society. It's 10 minutes. And you don't need to worry about elementary school because this is a middle school tournament. So the maximum time is 5 minutes for elementary. You can ignore that. It's 10 minutes for us. Speech to entertain. This is an either informative or persuasive speech, and the intent here is to use humor to affect the point. So you're using humor. It's not a stand-up comedy act. It's still a speech, but they are trying to use humor to make their points a little bit more relatable, I guess. Okay, so that's it for platform speeches. Are there any questions about that? Okay, seeing as there doesn't seem to be any questions, I'm going to move on to interpretations. So we'll go back and we'll talk about interpretation events. Okay, so interpretation, the first one here is prose. So prose literature should come from a short story, a novella, a novel, an article, something like that. And this should not be a play. You see down here, play cuttings, speeches, and poetry are prohibited. So this should be coming from some sort of printed, it is print, but not necessarily print published. So we do not have any requirements that have to make sure that this was has an ISBN. So the national board does that. We do not. So if someone finds a short story on a website somewhere that they want to use, then they can definitely use that as their prose. It's not an acting event, so there's no costumes or lighting or anything like that. And what's notable here is that the students do need to use a manuscript. So they typically have like a little black book that they use. It does not have to be black, and it doesn't even have to be in a binder. They just need to use a manuscript as they perform. Poetry. I think we probably know poetry when we see it. So this, again, same kind of thing. It's an acting event, so no costumes or props. And again, play cuttings and prose works are prohibited, so it needs to be poetry literature. And then down here you can see maximum time limit for middle school competitions is 7 minutes. And the same thing as well, like a manuscript is required. Duo interpretation. This is a memorized performance. It can come from any sort of literature. So it could be, so it says right here, from any genre of literature. This could be a play, a poem, a piece of prose. It could be from anywhere. Again, no costumes or props or lighting or anything like that. The competitors are not permitted to touch each other or make direct eye contact while performing, and the time limit is 10 minutes. One of the things that's notable about Duo is that for this tournament, we're gonna let me try to put my screen back up so you can kind of see me while we're discussing. It's going to be a little funky with Duo because some of them may be in two different video rooms, like because of the quarantine. I shouldn't say quarantine. I guess we're in lockdown, not quarantine. But they may be in different videos, or they may be sharing the same video depending on their circumstance. Some might be siblings who live together, and performing with different devices may be either cost prohibitive or it might eat up their connection to the internet. So we allow competitors to do it either way. They can either be on the same video or in two separate videos. And we ask that this event especially, you just be a little patient with people, because this is the event that probably translates the least to this online format. It's a tough one to work into. And I think the other ones are a little bit easier, but this one, even more than even the debates and everything else, I think Duo probably has the hardest time. So just work with the students a little bit and trying to be accommodating as long as they're still adhering by these rules. Next, we have POI. POI could have literature from any of the genres, prose, poetry, or drama. And in fact, it must have at least two of those three. So it could have a prose and poetry, it could have a prose and drama, it could have a poetry and drama, any two of those three. And you'll see here it says, should be development of a theme. So they should have some sort of theme in their performance. So they're using a bunch of different literature together to create a theme. So if the theme is bicycles, they might find a poem about bicycles and a short story about bicycles, something like that. Again, this is not an acting event. A manuscript is required here. A duo does not require a manuscript. Please note that. And then maximum time is 10 minutes, including the introduction. The rest of these events also do not use the manuscripts. Only POI, prose, and poetry use manuscripts. So the rest of these are a little more straightforward. Humorous interpretation, again, this is any literature, any type of literature. It could be a play or a poem or anything they'd like, a short story. And it's meant to be humorous in tone. And it is not an acting event. And the maximum time is 10 minutes. DI is almost the exact same thing, only now it's serious tone. Typically what we say is HI tries to make the audience laugh and DI tries to make the audience cry. Pretty much everything else between the two is very similar. The time limit is also 10 minutes. Declamation. Declamation, some people call it oratorical interp, but declamation is a speech that was written not by the contestant, so not by the competitor, but by someone else. This might be a TED Talk. This might be I Have a Dream or the Gettysburg Address. So this is a speech that the student has selected and they performed that speech. So they should have an introduction indicating the title, author, and date of the speech they're reciting. And then you'll see that maximum time is 10 minutes. Storytelling. So this is a memorized performance of a single, so it can only be one story, printed story, anecdote, myth, tale. So typically we say that the intended audience for a storytelling performance would be like a kindergartner or first grade. So you're kind of telling maybe like the story of Little Red Riding Hood or something along those lines. Again, there's no, there are no props or costumes, although they may be allowed one chair. So you'll notice that one chair is permitted during their performance and 5 minutes maximum. We're not doing original duo at this tournament, so we're going to skip that. We're not doing sight reading, so we're going to skip that. And we're not doing original interpretation, so we're going to skip that. And that's basically it. So if there are any questions about interpretation, I'm happy to take those questions now. Coach Parker, it looks like you have a question.
Thank you, President Cannon. I have a statement based on a conversation we have had, and I'd like to read that statement in order to be concise, and then let you comment on it.
Sure.
The audience for this statement is mainly coaches and experienced judges. Hi, everybody. The newbies won't necessarily know what I'm talking about here. So to begin, event conventions are not the same as event rules. Stay open to student creativity in relationship to their stationary camera. Comments like, you should stand, or you should use the speaker's triangle, or I have to see your whole body, are not necessarily true anymore. That's not a rule. Avoid those comments, please. The old conventions may die, new conventions may develop. What is effective on camera in this activity for our children is now developing. Aesthetics for it are now developing. Rules are not changing. And that's my statement. Would you comment on that, Mr. Cannon?
Yeah, I really couldn't agree more. I think a lot of times coaches and competitors alike, they hear conventions and then they oftentimes come to the tournament staff with, they're very upset and they say, oh, they cried in DI and tears are a prop. Well, our rules don't say that. I mean, that's open to interpretation. And I would say I don't think crying is a prop. And I've spoken with some of the higher ups at the national level and they agree. So that's a convention that you might see. And some people say, oh, you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to touch your hair or something like that. I don't see a rule that says that. So I would allow people to do those things. And sometimes rules are, we have to have they could be subjective in terms of like, we think that of them being objective, but we may have to have someone who is called in to make a determination. We have an ombudsman for this tournament to be able to make those decisions. But for the most part too, I think the spirit of what Coach Parker was talking about is, as someone is performing, they may decide to do something that goes outside our expectations of what we would imagine, but don't violate the rule. And I think that needs to be considered. That doesn't necessarily need to be rewarded, but it needs to be considered. And you can certainly write comments to say your choice here may not be the most effective choice, but if we're framing comments that say you shouldn't do this or you can't do that, and, you're not allowed to sit during the performance, well, again, the rules are what they are, but the commonality or the conventions are changing as we're moving on to an online format. And so we're just asking everybody to be a little more patient with that. So I hope that suffices. Coach Parker, is that all right? I got a thumbs up on that. Are there any other questions about interpretation? So Taehan, looks like you have a question.
Yeah, then led me to think about, like, it's like some of those speeches, like memorizing accurately is part of the requirement. But because of this new setting, we actually have no way of knowing if they're cheating or not. It's like a take-home exam. So that's something to think about.
You're right, and there are just some things that are out of our control. And you're right. I think a take-home exam is kind of it's kind of a good example, a good comparison. Ultimately, we just have the honor of the competitor and the coaches to do the right thing. And keep in mind, some of the events that we mentioned, for example, an informative, it does not say that it needs to be memorized. So we might even have some competitors who come in who are not memorized. You might be able to, as they're speaking, you might see their eyes kind of doing this across the page of the screen. and that's a possibility, right? And maybe that's worth noting down and saying, it looks like you're not memorized. Maybe you are, but if you are, maybe make stronger eye contact with the camera, something along those lines that might be constructive. I'm going to encourage all judges. There's one last thing I really want to make sure that everyone is hearing, which is please give feedback to the competitors. There's nothing more frustrating to the coach and to the competitors than an empty ballot with no feedback. And what we recommend is, we call it the compliment sandwich, where you begin with something that they're doing well, and then come up with some constructive feedback, and then something that they did well at the end. So that typically is a good format to do for each competitor. If you are handing a ballot that says, fantastic speech, good job, 5th place, that's incredibly frustrating. But even first place getting that note, that's not very helpful to the first place competitor. They want that feedback. They want to know what they can do to improve their speech and make it better. And they want justification for why you made the decision that you made. So just a reminder for everyone to please fill in some feedback. Are there any other questions about anything? Okay, well, if there aren't any other questions, looks like we do have one more question. Sorry, there's a guest over here that has a hand up.
Yes, it's Cecilia again. So if the judges assigned for individual events, are they going to be accidentally judging any of the debate formats, or vice versa?
So if I understand your question correctly, you're asking, would a judge who is registered to judge a speech event be accidentally included in the in a debate pool of judges? Is that your question?
Right, or vice versa.
No, not unless the coach has signed them up to do that. And that's what I was saying earlier, is that I've triple checked every single judge in this entire tournament to make sure that doesn't happen, because it also slows our tournament down and it messes up our estimation of how many judges we need for a given round. So not only do I want to be thorough, I want to make it smooth, and I want to make sure that you have a pleasant experience. I also want to make sure that it doesn't delay our side of tabulation. So I want to make sure that everything is done. So that should not be happening. If it does happen, so let's say that you are receiving a ballot for an event type that you did not sign up for, you need to notify us and say, hey, I didn't sign up for this. And then we'll start tracking down the problem. And we'll say, well, the coach did sign you up for that. So you need to take that up with the coach and try to sort out something. And then at that point, there may be fees, there may be some additional penalties. So there may be some incentive to encourage you to just kind of jump in there and do it anyway. So please have that discussion with your coaches ahead of time so that there's no unpleasantness. And it will start to reflect on us like as if we're doing something wrong, but we're only taking the information that the coach registered you for.
Got it. Thank you.
Raj, you have a question?
Yes, quick two questions. The first one is, how do the judges, how does the process eliminate conflict of interest? So I'm presuming that you wouldn't be judging any event that your own student is involved in. Would that apply also to any events that students from your particular school or academy are involved in?
Yeah, so obviously that would be a huge conflict of interest. And what happens is when you are registered as a coach, as a judge, your coach has registered as a team, and it says, all right, this team, here's all of the different judges that we've got, and these judges are associated with that team. And when I start putting all of the judges in their proper places, when I do that, it looks for this judge and it says, is there anyone in this room that's from the same school as this judge? Oh, there is? Okay, we can't use that judge. And then it goes to the next one. So it automatically does all of that. And there are even additional ways that I can code some people off. So for example, we have a few judges who are registered for one school, but they actually coach at another school. And so when they sign up, we note that and we say, hey, you can't be judging these students either because you know them. Even though you're not from the same school, you know them. So we code them off from that, and that way they're not selected from that either.
Okay, great. And how do I connect with you offline or at the end of this session with the issue of judging criteria feedback? I can connect at another time or whenever it's convenient to you.
Yeah, probably the easiest thing to do is just go to the tournament registration page, and there's a contact tournament tab on there, and you can send a message, or you can find my email and invitation, and you can send it that way.
Okay, thank you.
I'm hesitant to start putting out personal information on the internet. You know how it goes.
I get it.
Are there any other questions? Okay, so if you do have questions, then please either reach out to me aside from this, or reach out to your coaches and ask the coaches for clarification. Thank you all very much. This will be available on YouTube if you want to come back and rewatch, if you want to share with other people who weren't here, and they can watch all this and get kind of a breakdown of everything else. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So no Zoom bombing happened.
Hopefully not. Hopefully not. No, we've taken great steps to ensure that doesn't happen.
Yep. All right. Thanks.
Thanks.
How do I get out of here? Oh, wait.
You press the red button in the middle.
Oh, yeah. How do I make my profile picture like yours? Where's the setting?
The profile, what is my profile picture?
Like instead of the R or initial, my like a kind of a thumbnail picture when I'm.
It's kind of complicated. You have to log in a different way, and it's probably beyond what this video should go through. But
it's like
right now, your icon says TK.
Yeah. So I want to be more hip. Okay. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.